So sadly, the best month of the year is coming to a close. However, a new month means new books. So let's look at 10 new fantasy and sci-fi books coming out in the month of September that you should know about. And September is kind of one of those months where it can be a bit hit or miss. But oh boy, is this month a hit. There's so many really cool books releasing this month I can't wait to tell you about. Starting with September 1st, with the third book in the Time of Dragons series by Philip C. Quantrell, called The Last Ballad of Hope. First of all, sick title, sick cover. Now, we did go over the first book in the A Time of Dragons series twice now, when the sequel came out, because this is book 3, so I'm not going to go over it again. However, this is a classic epic fantasy series with dragons that is connected to Philip's Echo Saga series as well, but this is a sequel series. So you can start with A Time of Dragons instead of jumping to Echo Saga first. You can start whichever you want to. So if you're looking for a brand new epic fantasy series, definitely check this one out if you're into sort of classic fantasy and dragon riding fantasy. And the reviews have just been so good for this series, so you can't go wrong. However, if you're looking for something a little bit shorter, you do not need to wait long. In fact, not at all, because on the same day, we have the Infernus Gate, the third book in the Seven Swords series by Anthony Ryan. Now, this is a series of novellas, so they all are rather short. I think they're about 100 pages-ish each. Yeah, this new one is 136 pages according to Goodreads. And this series is all about these 7 demon-cursed blades. And we follow this character called Pilgrim, armed with one of these swords that contains a demon. So it almost has this Elric Nightblood dynamic where the sword is able to talk to him. And I read the first 2 novellas in this series, and they're really fun. They're just classic fantasy feeling, little bite-sized fantasy adventures, and I highly recommend them. And now I believe the 7th one is the last one, so you can get the entire series now. I think. Because of 7 blades, 7 novellas, I think. Coming out September 2nd, we have Making History. Now, this is another novella that is a historical fantasy. Academics can be cocky, atop their perches of authority high above the thrumming masses of the unquestioning world. They can begin to think themselves gods. It is extremely rare for this authority to be tested, but a challenge from an idiotic, power-hungry king, that'll do it. Our narrator is one of a dozen professors at the University of the Kingdom of Aelia. Early one morning, all of them are rounded up for an audience with their dictator, Gyges. You see, Gyges is new to the job. He only just invaded Aelia last year, and like any good tyrant, he's looking to expand his empire. But he doesn't think his public image can take the hint of another unjustified assault. No problem. He's come up with a plan. Have the scholars construct an ancient city from scratch that justifies his right to the lands of the neighboring city-state. Now, these bookworms must put their heads together to do the impossible. They must make history, because if they don't, they'll lose their heads altogether. I tried to keep these videos to mainly full-length novels. However, sometimes they're just a novella that really just sounds interesting to me, and just the premise of this one kind of stands out as something that would be a little different and a little bit interesting. I really like the idea of this group of scholars that have to fabricate all this history and this ancient city just for this tyrant. It's just a really cool idea. Also, coming out on September 2nd, we have a brand new Stephen King book. But it's not what you think. It's a picture book of Hansel and Gretel. The haunting tale of 2 brave children lost in a dark and dangerous forest. Reimagined by literary legends Stephen King and Maurice Sedank in an all-new picture book. Again, another weird pick for this type of video, but it's a new Stephen King book, even if it is a picture book. So I thought, especially for those who want to read to perhaps their children in sort of the October fall season, this might be the perfect read. Or those who just really like Stephen King, because again, He's a legend in space. Coming out on September 9th, we have a Tangle in Time, the second book in the Hexologists series by Josiah Bancroft. Because this is a sequel, we will go over the synopsis for book 1, and then you'll know if you want to jump into book 2 or not. The Hexologists, Iz and Warren Wilby, are quite accustomed to helping desperate clients with their bugbears of city life. Aided by hexes and a bag of charmed relics, the Wilbys have recovered children abducted by chimney wraiths, removed infestations of barbed-nosed incubi, and ventured into the grey plains of the unmade to soothe a troubled ghost. Well acquainted with the weird, they never shy away from a challenging case. But when they are approached by the royal secretary and told the king pleads to be baked into a cake, going so far as to wedge himself inside a lit oven, the Wilbys soon find themselves embroiled in a mystery that could very well see the nation turned on its head. Their effort to expose a royal secret buried under 40 years of lies brings them nose to nose with a violent, anti-royalist gang, avaricious ghouls, alchemists who draw their power from a hell-like dimension, and a bookish dragon who only occasionally eats people. Armed with a love toughened by adversity, and a stick of chalk that can conjure light from darkness, hope from the hopeless, Iz and Warren Wilby are ready for a case that will test every spell, skill, and odd magical artifact in their considerable bag of tricks. This series sounds really cool. I love the sound of it. It reminds me a bit of Tainted Cup, kind of this weird, bizarre world with this duo that are trying to solve these very strange problems that arise. I also really like this alchemists who are drawing powers from hell-like dimensions, and a bookish dragon? Hell yeah. And there's no better time to hop into the series now that book 2 is coming out on the 9th of September. Coming out September 15th, we have Reckoning by Michael R. Miller, the 4th book in the Songs of Chaos series. Now this is another classic dragon fantasy series. This seems to be the month for epic dragon fantasy series. And can we just take a moment to look at this cover? So damn cool. Now, I read and really enjoyed Ascendant. It is a classic dragon riding epic fantasy with a lot of fun, familiar tropes, especially in that first book. But as the series goes on, you get a lot more of these progression-like elements with the, I want to say magic system, but it's more to do with the bond between the dragon and the main character. That was the one thing that really stood out for me with Ascendant, was the fact that Michael really lent into a lot of the connection and this sort of bond between dragon and its rider, a lot more than other dragon riding fantasies have in the past for me. And I really like that element. You really got to see them kind of bond over time. And also, I really highly recommend the audiobooks. I will say that the physical copies are beautiful, especially the hardcovers. They are stunning. But the audiobooks, if you do like audiobooks, I also highly recommend the audiobooks. And again, no better time to jump in when the 4th book is releasing this month. Coming out September 16th, we have Among the Burning Flowers. With the awakening of fire-breathing dragons, Among the Burning Flowers sees the first sparks of danger that threaten to consume the world in the priory of the Orange Tree. Take your first steps into this epic. Yscallan, land of sunshine and lavender, will soon be ablaze. It has been centuries since the Draconic army took wing, almost extinguishing humankind. Marussa Vidalta is a prisoner in her own home, controlled by her cold father, King Sigosil. Over the mountains, her betrothed, Abret Livelin, rules Mentendon in all but name. Together they intend to usher in a better world. A better world seems impossibly distant to Estina Melago, who hunts the draconic beasts that have slept across the world for centuries. And now the great worm, Fredel, is stirring, and Yscallan will be the first to fall. This is a prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. Again, it just seems to be a month of dragons. But who doesn't love dragons? No complaints here. This series continues to have some of the most standout covers I have seen. I think they look really cool. And coming out September 30th, we have the legendary author of The Witcher returning with Crossroads of Ravens. Crossroads of Ravens is a perfect entry point for new readers and an unmissable must-read for longtime fans. This standalone novel follows an 18-year-old Geralt of Rivia, the iconic Witcher who has captivated audiences across 8 books numerous short stories, the record-breaking video games of CD Projekt Red, and Netflix's hit series, all called The Witcher. On his first mission from the Witcher stronghold of Kaer Morhen, Geralt will discover monsters, traitors, some new friends, and some familiar faces, and just how deeply feared and despised Witchers can be. I'm not sure I need to say much about The Witcher. It's one of the biggest fantasy series in modern times. I do, however, find it interesting that this is a very good entry point, so even if you haven't started The Witcher books yet, this could be a very good way to get into the series, especially when there's so much back and forth with where to enter with The Witcher. A lot of people are pointing towards the short story collection, where I've heard other people point to the first full-length novel. This is a good way to just kind of get into the world with something kind of standalone and a prequel to the entire series. This is coming from a complete noob. I've not read Witcher yet, but really interested to check it out, especially with this as being a possible entry point into the series. However, if you are looking for someone who does know what they're talking about, I highly recommend Vera's channel. I will leave a link below. She does some amazing videos, especially on The Witcher. She's probably the biggest Witcher fan I know of, so definitely check out her channel if you're looking for some Witcher-related content. Also coming out September 30th, we have The Sleepless by Jen Williams. A brand new series from the author that brought us Ninth Reign. Elvar is the guardian of the wild and dangerous monster forest. Saved from the brink of death by a god, her skin will poison anyone she touches. Artair is on a mission, one that takes him face to face with Elvar at her most ruthless. But her defenses are useless when she discovers he's the only human impervious to her deadly gift. For Artair isn't human, he's one of the Sleepless, cursed to share his body with an evil spirit. Lucian inhabits their body while Artair sleeps, and he is hell-bent on manipulating Elvar for his dark purposes. But Elvar is harboring secrets too, and she has her own reasons for feigning an alliance with these two souls. Caught in the crossfire of gods, monsters, and a dangerous magic they can barely understand, it is only a matter of time before the paths of the three of them choose to take will set alight the very foundations of their world. With a love triangle like you've never seen it, incredible world building, brilliant writing, and a dangerous quest, The Sleepless will have you spellbound. I'm not normally a fan of kind of love triangles. In fact, romance in books is just not normally my thing. However, the idea of it kind of being with the same person and the fact that two souls are within the body definitely adds an interesting factor to it. It definitely complicates matters, and I think the sort of interpersonal relationship between the three of them while on this quest would be really interesting to read about. And last but most certainly not least, also coming out on September 30th, we have the one that I was talking about. That's technically two books rather than one, and that is because the author Michael D. Warden is releasing the first two books in his series on the same day. The first being Gideon's Dawn, and the second being The Waymaker. A shattered man, a wounded land, an ancient prophecy links their fate, balancing destiny on the edge of a knife. Gideon, a shattered loner from our world, finds himself in a wounded land where an ancient prophecy has cast him as the catalyst for the doom or the deliverance of an entire people, maybe even an entire world. Trapped between mystical forces with powers he doesn't understand, he tries to escape, tries to tell them they've got the wrong guy, but no one believes him, and everyone wants a piece of him. Those who don't want to proclaim him as a great deliverer want to kill him as a harbinger of doom. He's got no way home and nowhere to run, but it's too late to escape now anyway. The Dark Lords know his name and have unleashed their incredible power to hunt him down and destroy him, along with anyone who gathers around him. Is he a pawn or a prophet? Only time will tell, but time is the one thing he no longer has. This is really cool. I love the reluctant hero trope. It's just one of my favorites. And the idea that he's kind of painted as this chosen one, this hero that everybody's hoping is going to either save them or perhaps even destroy the world, definitely has that sort of Wheel of Time, second coming of the dragon type, not second coming, but further next coming in the wheel's turning of the hero. It has the same sort of setup and vibe as that I really, really like. I'm also assuming that the shattered loner from our world means it's kind of like a person who has woken up in this fantasy world. I may be wrong, but that's what I got from that sentence. And I really like that as kind of a interesting addition to epic fantasy, something that's a lot more common in Japanese media. However, we do have it in things like the Stephen Donaldson books with Thomas Covenant. So not to say it doesn't exist, but it's just a lot more rare in Western media. So that sounds really, really cool, really interesting. And not only that, but books 3 and 4 are releasing at the start of December. So even if you fly through these two, you don't need to wait long until books 3 and 4. The Song That Shatters and The Word That Prevails. And over on the Discord, we are moving on to Ashes of Man, the 5th book in the Sun Eater series. This series just continues to be incredible. I loved all of them, but Demon in White and Kingdoms of Death really shot the series up to becoming an all-time favorite. So I'm very excited to continue on to Ashes of Man. But let me know in the comments below what you will be reading in the month of September. Thanks very much for watching. Outro. Coming out in September